20th Century, Age of Conflict. A. First World War. Introduction. The 20th century had been rife with very significant events. In the beginning of this century, there had been so many conflicts. A fierce competition was going on among the imperialists in Europe. This gave rise to several dire consequences. The war witnessed the use of the new inventions and knowledge. Destructive weapons, arms, and ammunition, tanks, warships, machine guns, lethal explosives were used on a large scale. In the wake of the war, there was a rise of dictatorship in many nations. Fascism and Nazism exhibited the narrow-minded and negative dimensions of governance. The cause of World War I and its consequences. The assassination of the royal representative of Austria was an incentive for the nation to smoother Serbia. Austria imposed unacceptable demands on Serbia. Serbia was given only 48 hours to fulfill those demands. At the time, Russia supported and gave military help to Serbia. After getting support from Russia, Serbia denied the demands of Austria. As a result, the international conflict of the First World War got underway. Austria declared war against Serbia on 28 July 1914. If Austria emerges victorious in the war, its prestige would rise in the Balkan region. Therefore, Russia began assisting Serbia. Germany warned Russia to retreat its army within 12 hours. Russia did not heed to the warning, and Germany declared war on Russia. At that time, France decided to support Russia. Germany announced war against France too. As per Triple Alliance, Italy should support Germany. But Italy entered into war on 1950 from England and France side against Germany. Germany attacked Belgium and France strongly. England had been neutral during this period. However, due to the German aggressiveness, England had to enter the battlefield. Germany utilized submarine-in-war strategy on a large scale against the English forces. The Bolshevik government came into power after the communist revolution in Russia. The new government made an agreement and came out from the First World War. The German submarines targeted a ship named Lusitania, and the ship was submerged. Several American passengers on board were killed. Germany did not budge in spite of all the warnings issued by America. On the contrary, Germany kept using the submarines. At the long last, on 6th April 1917, America declared a war against Germany. The American involvement in the war strengthened the position of the Allies. This was the turning point in the war. Allied countries started to blockade on Germany. There was no option for Germany's surrender. At that time, in Germany democratic government was established. This new government decided to surrender as per 14 points of American President Woodrow Wilson, and signed on 11th November 1918, the First World War came to an end. Under the control of European imperialism, countries like India had an unwanted involvement in the war. Analyzing the causes and effects of the war, Paris Peace Treaty signed on 1990 till 1920. Many unjust sanctions were imposed on the defeated nations. The Versailles Treaty against Germany was called insulting and unjustified. Immediate cause of the war. An extremist Serbian citizen assassinated the Prince of Austria, Archduke Francis Ferdinand, on 28 June 1914 in Sarajevo, the capital city of Bosnia. This was the immediate cause of the First World War. Effect of the First World War. The First World War during 1914 to 1918. First, this war witnessed a huge damage and destruction of human life and property. Second, in this war, 1 crore soldiers and lakhs of civilians died. Third, most of them who died in the war were the young generation of Europe. It affected the future life of Europe. Fourth, during the war period, European industries were collapsed. As a result, economic conditions started to deteriorate. Fifth, shortage of essential things caused price rise. It affected the daily life of the people. Sixth, except America and Japan, all the countries faced economic crisis. Seventh, in the World War, America emerged as a superpower. Eighth, the royal rules in Russia, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Turkey came to an end. Ninth, defeated nations and their empires were divided into 2 new countries, that is, Poland, Finland, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. 10th, after the First World War, family system, traditional virtues, and ethics was struck. 11th, in future there should not be such war. For this purpose, according to the 14 points of Woodrow Wilson, the League of Nations was set up in 1920. According to Versailles Treaty made with Germany, was humiliating and unjustified, and all the responsible laid down on Germany. Germany had to pay the war losses, and this treaty sowed the seed of Second World War. Age of conflict. Thus, the beginning of the 20th century, which had been full of fundamental changes, is considered to be a age of conflicts. The boundaries of several nations in the world also changed drastically. The armed conflicts involved the death of lakhs of people. Nevertheless, the positive dimensions of the period were tremendous progress in the field of science and technology, destruction of despotic reigns, spread of democracy, and experiments in internationalism. The period of conflicts began with the First World War in 1914. The war caused several long-term effects in the global politics. The situation in the European continent became explosive due to excessive ambitions of the nations, mutual disbelief, rivalry, and ill will. This gave rise to the First World War. This war witnessed the direct or indirect participation of a big number of nations, including India. The reasons behind the war were several and very complicated. the reasons for war were as follows. Aggressive nationalism. While comparing to the other countries, my country's status is greater. Such type of thinking developed in European countries before the First World War, and those who expanded their territory, they had an important place in European politics. So all the European nations started their aggressive nationalism. Some big countries in Europe became imperial country to prove their nationalism. Germany, Russia and Austria were trying to capture new areas out of Europe. Aggressive nationalism increased international conflict. Division of European nations into two groups. In the year 1902, there was a friendship treaty with England and Japan with a view to ensure security to its trade and colonies in Asia. France was threatened by the expansive strategies of Germany. France and England were conventional rivals. However, these two nations decided to bury their enmity and brought about an agreement in 1904. This caused an end to the long-drawn battle between England and France. In the year 1907, a friendship agreement was signed between Russia and England. This formed an alliance of England, France and Russia Triple Alliance. On the other hand, the nations belonging to the Central Europe, namely Germany, Italy and Austria Triple Entente, got united under another group. Thus, the European nations were divided between these rival groups. Either group began fierce military strengthening in order to dominate the other group. This intensified military activation gave rise to the First World War. Diplomatic groupism. In the reign of Bismarck, Germany turned into a powerful country. He developed military strength by producing arms and ammunition to keep his country safe. In 1866, Germany defeated Austria and France in 1870, but later Bismarck developed friendship. In 1871, Germany annexed the provinces of Alsace and Lorraine with the Treaty of Frankfurt, which belonged to France. After that, he isolated France by keeping it aloof. England and France had traditional enmity since centuries. Bismarck took care to see that France and England should not come together. He accepted not to hurt England. There was dispute between France and Italy about religious and colonial problems. Bismarck had taken an opportunity to include Italy in his group. In 1882, Triple Alliance Agreement was made among Germany, Austria, Italy. Militarism. European nations started to pile arms and ammunition to bring peace in their country. They also thought that the war was the only solution for their problems. Large number of weapons and ammunition were manufactured in Europe. Advanced weapons, warships and tanks were produced on a large scale. These war equipments were only for peace and safety of the nation, was justified by the European countries. Every European country was keeping confidential about the military power. Due to this, European diplomatic politics became explosive. Imperialism of the European nations. During the 19th century, the European nations supported colonization and economic imperialism. Every nation of the European continent which developed industrialization was in need of colonies. It was prestigious to build a vast empire. They felt need for market for the industrial products. The industrial nations started a search for external markets. There had been the presence of the European traders in various nations of the Asian continent right from the 16th century. The second half of the 19th century witnessed the discovery of the less-known African continent. The nations in the African continent were undeveloped. As a result, the European nations focused their attention to the probable markets in the African continent. The European nations also had the belief that they were superior nations in Asia and Africa. With a view to a smooth marketing process, the European nations grabbed the regions in the Asian and African continents. These regions held the markets and generated the raw material. Germany and Italy entered late in the imperialism. England and France were in the forefront and captured the important places in Asia and Africa. The imperial mentality grew more intense as the European nations realized the financial importance of these regions. Due to cutthroat rivalry among the European nations for imperial expansion, they had fought several battles. This situation converted into the World War. Political complications in the Balkan area. The East European region under the Empire of Turkey was known as the Balkan area. There was complete peace in Balkan area. Due to geographical importance of this area, England, France and Russia interfered into the politics of this area. The people in this region had begun the national movement against the Turkey rule. Russia began to exert pressure on the Balkan region, as the citizens of this region were slaves by race. England and France felt that the route to Asia via Mediterranean Sea would thus be endangered for their interest. Therefore, England and France interfered in this region as they did not want Russian power there. The boundary of Austria-Hungary was touching the Balkan region. Austria too had an interest in Balkan region for imperial expansion. Therefore, Austria was all set to capture the region. For this reason, there was conflict between Austria and Serbia. Bosnia and Herzegovina were the important states for Austria and Serbia. A political revolution took place in Turkey in 1908. Taking full advantage of this situation, Austria annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina, the regions of Balkan. Bulgaria too declared itself as an independent country. However, there was unrest in the Balkan region. Kaisar William II. In the year 1888, Kaisar William II became the Emperor of Germany. In his reign in Germany, much development took place in industrial sector. He adopted aggressive colonizing policy in the continent. He developed the naval force with the intentions of increasing trade and capturing new colonies. He confiscated regions in the Africa and China. During his tenure, he purchased Caroline, Palau, and Mariana Islands from Spain for setting up new naval bases. To encounter England in the eastern region, he got rights from Emperor of Turkey to build the railway line from Berlin to Baghdad, up to the Gulf of Iran. England, France and Russia strongly opposed this project of Kaisar William. That is why he could not complete the Berlin-Baghdad train route. He rebuilt and repaired the Kiel Canal, which helped the German warships enter on the North Sea. Due to increase of colonization, naval development of Kaisar William increased conflict between England and Germany.